Say chicks, let's chat. Woo, so this one right here. Listen, ladies. If you or your daughters or your sisters, cousins, aunties, anybody have had to experience fibroids, send them this video. Especially if they're going through it now, right? Especially the younger generation. Because I feel like for me, I had heard about fibroids, but I really didn't know anything about them. The most I had heard was when my aunt had got pregnant, she was saying that her fibroids, they tend to grow when she's pregnant. Okay, I remember that. Didn't think anything else about it. Had never heard my mom or my other aunties or grandma. I don't think I remember hearing anything else about it, right? So when the symptoms started hitting me, I didn't really know what was going on. And to be honest, I had been dealing with the symptoms for a long time, not knowing that this is why this is going like that. Now, me, I tend to talk to like older ladies, so I like if I'm on the job, sometimes I tend to befriend. It may be an older lady, and I just tend to become friends with her. I just feel like I learn a lot from, you know, the elder women who are nice, have common sense, they're, you know, open, they like to talk, you know, not a angry mean ones or whatever. Hey, they get the same energy. But the nicer ones, I tend to befriend them. So I remember having a friend at work, and she was telling me that, you know, and this was probably about, like 15 years ago or so. So I was probably right good in my mid-30s or something. And she was saying, late 20s, mid-30s probably. She was saying that she had a hysterectomy. Now, I had heard about hysterectomies. But I was thinking, I mean, what I knew about hysterectomies mostly was women got them when they didn't want to have no more kids, right? That was the bulk of what I knew about hysterectomies at that time. And that they were getting them so that they didn't have to have no more children. They didn't get pregnant anymore. I didn't realize the other reason why women got hysterectomies, due to them fibroids and the heavy bleeding. Didn't realize that, right? So all of that I would come to find out, right? So I remember my coworker telling me that she had one. She was saying that she was going through her, you know, she was having to, you know, change out just like on the hourly, like regular, like, and I was like, that blew my mind at that time. I'm like, oh, an hour? Like, some things seem amazing until you actually get in that situation and you like, okay, this is what I was hearing about, right? So during that time, I had started having some issues with my cycle. And remind you, like, well, I had the perfect cycle like forever. It came like clockwork. I didn't have cramps. It stayed, it's 3-4 days. That was it. That was it. No spotting in between. Like, I had the perfect all my life until I got like late 20s, early 30s and on. So at this time I'm experiencing like, you know, weirdness. But I'll go back to when it first started. I was taking birth control pills, right? And I had started taking birth control pills because I was, you know, knee deep into some things. But then me and that person was like, well, hey, let's go for it. So I instantly stopped taking them, right? So when I instantly stopped taking them, plus I didn't like taking them. They used to make me sick. Like, I just didn't care for them. So I instantly stopped taking them, probably like mid-cycle or something, right? So I was like, okay, cool. Because I didn't get a cycle. And I didn't get one for months after that. So I was like, I wasn't missing it, you know, because I'm just like, okay. But at first I was like, okay, well, I ain't got no cycle. Like, am I pregnant or whatever, right? So that wasn't the case. But I didn't get a cycle for months and months. And then I ended up moving, right? And as soon as I moved, the cycle came. And when the cycle came, oh my goodness, it was like a monster cycle. I had never experienced this before. That cycle stayed for 2 months. I repeat that, for 2 months. And nobody in my family could believe it or knew why. Like, hadn't heard of it. So I'm definitely clueless, like, what in the world? And listen, this had never happened before. So like I said, I had the perfect cycle all my life. So when this happens, I'm like, what in the world is going on? You know? So I go to a doctor. He give me something. I take it for a couple days and it goes off. So I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking that that's it, that it'll never happen again. Not so. Probably get back on the good foot and things may be regular, but then it happens again. So now it's like every time it comes, I hate to see it because I don't know when it's going to leave. Oh, I hated it. It was terrible. It was terrible. But now I knew what to do. So I had moved back to the city that I had just left from. So now I know what to do. I'm like, hey, I need something to make this go off. Because it's here. It's been here over a week or so. Like, I was definitely not going to let it go no long time again, right? So same thing happens. Gives me something to make it go off, you know. So I end up going to the doctor. Changing doctors is what I did. By that time, it seemed like my cycle had got a little more stable, you know. And again, now I'm like, okay, well, let me see about, you know, do I want to have a baby? So I remember being like 30 around this time. So the doctor was like, listen, everything looks wonderful, looks great. If you want to have a kid, it's time for you to do it now. If you try for a couple months, you can't. You come back, I'll give you something. When he said that, I was like, okay, cool. Now I was scared because I'm like, okay, well, everything is fine. Like, I can have kids. But do I really want them now? So now I'm scared. I'm like, I don't know about that, but hey. So I ain't really trying at this point. You know, I'm kind of like me and the dude, we ain't really, you know, on that no more. Like, he's pretty much went on with his life. I'm going on with mine. So anyways, everything is like normal around that time. The years start to pass. It's kind of like a regular cycle, but the cycle has gotten heavier, starts to get heavier when it comes. So moved again, changed, relocated, got a doctor in the town where I'm currently, not where I'm currently at, but not too far. So then that doctor tells me, hey, you have a fibroid. And you can let me know what you want to do about it. So I'm like, well, what is my options? Because I don't want to have no surgeries. And so then I look at the paper and I research all this stuff that it says. It's funny words, but basically the words tell you how the fibroid is situated. Whether it's sticking out, whether it's ingrained in your tissue, or whether it's poking out, or, you know, all of that. Those words describe the fibroid, right? So I start Googling them, looking them up, and I realized, I'm like, okay, so this is what it's doing. So I go to a specialist. So I tell him about, I was like, yeah, so the fibroid is it? He was like, okay, I see you did your research, you know. So he was like, well, like, what do you want to do about it? Because really, it's not really bothering anything. The way it's situated, it's not preventing any pregnancies or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, cool. It's not a problem, but the bleeding and the weird cycles is a problem, but I feel like I could deal with it. Okay. So fast forward a couple more years, and now I'm getting older, right? So I'm like, okay, my mom was sick and stuff like that. I'm like, if I'm gonna have a kid, I want to have it before my mom. Anything happened to her, I want to have a kid before anything happened to my grandma. So the dude I'm dealing with, I'm like, listen, you the only person I'm dealing with. So, like, how you feel about this? So he got a whole raggedy situation going on. He like, well, I'm on board with what you want to do, but I can't do it right now. But I will do it with you. So I was like, okay, cool. So probably about a year later, and he like, okay, I'm on board. So I was like, okay, well, we'll try. So we started trying, and nothing. So I'm like, what in the world? So I remember when my cycle didn't come, and I knew, I was like, listen, when my cycle don't come, like, this is like, because I thought it was back to how it used to be. Like, if it don't come, that means one thing, So I go do a pregnancy test, and I'm like, nothing. So I'm like, I had them do another, because I'm like, I'm feeling weird. Like, ain't nowhere in the world I can't be, They was like, yeah, we don't understand why, like, because, your cycle hasn't been, and it's like, but we did it twice, and I'm like, okay. So now I'm really concerned, like, what could be going on with me that, like, I'm trying, and he already have a few kids, so, like, what's going on? So, continue to try, nothing. So I was like really aching one day, so I went to the ER. So they was like, nothing. We did a CAT scan, and she was like, besides the fibroids. And I was like, fibroids, like, plural? Like, I knew about one, but that one wasn't supposed to be in the way of anything, or, So she gave me this doctor. So, like, in my release paperwork, the follow-up had, like, a specialist. So I didn't do nothing right away. But during that time, my cycles were terrible. Terrible, terrible, right? I mean, you can't imagine how I had to strap up just to go to work. I mean, so imagine, like, you got on, like, 2 or 3 pads. You got on tights. You got, because you don't want nothing to bleed through. You got extra clothes. I mean, it's just miserable. And you can't do no tampon, because tampon is just like turning on a faucet. It's going to make you bleed heavier. So it's like, when this time of the month came, it was just pure misery. Like, just getting from my bed to my room, getting from my bed to the bathroom, it was terrible. And during that time, all I could think about is like, man, I'm glad I don't have no man that's like living with me, because I can control when he comes, but if someone was living with me, I would have to explain this, and I can't even explain this right now. My body is like letting me down. Like, I don't know why it's acting like this. And you feel like who else, you don't really know a lot of your other friends, or at least y'all not discussing it, that's going through this. So you feel like you walking through this by yourself, right? So, it had got, the cycle just got to be so bad. I'm like, let me go. I went back to the discharge papers, and then I'm like, okay, let me look at their website. So I find out, like, their website, okay, like, they do a lot of stuff. Like, this really is probably where I need to be going. They do everything here. So I read the reviews, excellent reviews. All the doctors got good reviews. But y'all do know that You know, in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, they could have had their assistant, their best friends, or anybody write these reviews, you know. So that don't really mean nothing. But so just randomly, I picked the doctor, and I went. And I like men doctors. I don't like women. I don't like women doctors. I don't. So I go to the man doctor. He look younger than me, so I'm like, what is he gonna tell me about me? When I say this is one of the best doctors I ever ran across, when I say he took so much time with me, telling me about you name it, hearing everything I had to say. I mean, I was so comfortable talking to him because number one, he was so well versed, well informed. He knew what he was talking about because I had started, you know, reading up on stuff as much as I can too. So when the stuff he was saying, I was able to clearly understand it because I had been doing my own research trying to figure out what's going on, right? So I'm like, yes, he knows. Goodness gracious. So he say, you know, so I tell him like, listen, this bleeding, I can't deal with it no more. So he's like, so basically it come down to, you know, he do like a exam. He could tell from the exam that he could tell from just doing the physical exam that basically I have fibroids, right? So it come down to him saying, what is it that you want to address? Do you want to address the actual fibroid, or do you want to address the symptoms from the fibroid, which is the bleeding? And I was like, well, I can have sex without it ain't hurting me with having sex, but I am wondering, is this a problem with, you know, why I haven't conceived, right? But years ago, I was having problems conceiving, and the doctor said that he didn't see any fibroid. So I don't know if now the fibroid is the issue, or just, hey, it just ain't for you, you know. So he had me do you know, the pelvic ultrasound, and so now it's 2 fibroids. It's the one that I've been had that it's just there doing this little thing. It ain't bothering nobody. But it is the size of a golf ball, right? Now, when he tell me about this other fibroid, now this joker is like the size of an orange, right? And the way it's situated, it's not just off on its own. It's situated like all up and through the uterus, put it like that. From the tissue to the muscle to it's in there. So what he's saying is that it would be hard for an embryo to embed in your uterine lining with your fibroid being all through the muscle, the lining, and everything. It will be hard for an embryo to embed. So he said, but because of how big it is, it also would be hard for me to operate on you without me having to basically cut all through your uterus to cut that out and then piece it back together. And then you're going to have some scar tissue. So then even if you're looking to get pregnant again, you will have, the scar tissue could prevent the embryo from embedding. So now I'm like, okay. So I'm probably ain't having no kids. But that's understanding what's going on give you a peace, because before you just know you ain't getting pregnant, but you don't know why. You know, but at least if this ain't the reason why, it could be the reason why, right? So like he said, I would have to, you know, kind of have known you then to see what was going on with you then as to why you didn't get pregnant before, right? Haven't got pregnant since my 12th grade year when I decided not to have the baby. After that, I didn't want no kids till later on in life, right? So now I understand, okay, it's going to be hard conceiving. But the plan is to try to get the fibroid shrunk. And then if we get it small enough, then he could go in and remove it if it shrinks small enough. But what we're going to do to shrink it, and what we're going to do to address the issues of the blood. Because when he said, hey, what you want to work on, I'm like, it's the blood I can't deal with. The fibroid is just like hanging out there. I don't really know what's there other than it makes my stomach look huge. You know, even when I had, you know, lost a lot of weight, my stomach still was, you know, a good size. So yeah, because your fibroid is big enough where it has your uterus, like you're 16 weeks pregnant, which is 4 months. So I'm like, okay, well then that explains some stuff now, because I've been walking to death. Like everything, you know, had been slimming up, but it's like I still got this little pouch. Okay, now you understand why. Fibroid. So anyways, what we're gonna do? So then he give me some options. You could do this. So I go and research everything, and I'm like, okay, come down to this shot called Uterine depot shot or whatever. So I get on YouTube, of course, and I'm looking at all the reviews, all the everything. So I'm like, I ain't finna get this. I tell you what, I was like, no, I ain't gonna get on. Or what I'm gonna do when I ain't finna get it. My cycle came on one more time. And when I tell you, I was staying with my friend because I had moved out of my house, getting ready to rent it out. Well, actually, by that time, it was already rented. So I'm staying with my friend until I move where I want to move. And I'm like, man, see, it's different when your cycle crazy and you at your house. You staying with somebody. You don't want to be messy, leave no. So I'm like, oh, Lord, this is crazy. So I'm like, nope, I'm definitely finna get this. So what he told me was that this shot is going to put your body into menopause. So of course I didn't want to do that, but I'm like, okay, you know, but also not knowing what comes with menopause, I'm still like, okay, well, I don't want menopause until I have to get menopause, but at this point, I'm willing to take it. So he's like, you know, telling me all the things that could possibly come with menopause. And he said, I can only give you this shot, you know, so many times. And it depends on how your insurance is. They either will pay for it monthly or they'll pay for it like once every 4 months. If they pay for it once every 4 months, then I can only give it to you, you know, those many times out of the year. So I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. So I start, you know, he has to put in a special order, etc. Insurance denied. I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm like, so they say, ma'am, this single injection is like $5,000. I'll say, well, I understand why they refused it. But at the same time, that's what I pay insurance for. So how y'all just because it's a lot, you're not gonna pay for it. So that was a misunderstanding. So they was like, well, no, we're gonna pay for it, etc. So forth. It just has to be put in the system a certain way because it's specialty medication. So I'm like, okay. So I go get the injection, and he told me, he was like, your first cycle that come on is gonna be bad. But I'm like, okay, all of them been bad. But after that, you ain't gonna have one for like 3 months or so. Hey, just when I thought them other ones had been bad, that next one, I said, Lord, listen, I don't know how in the world you could bleed this much and still be living. Ain't nowhere in the world. Okay, but guess what? It did stop. Boy, I ain't seen no cycle for almost the rest of the year. And I wasn't mad, you hear me? I was not mad. When I went to do a checkup, the fibroids had done shrunk like 2 inches. Still not enough to go in and get it. But it was doing what the medication does. No blood, meaning no cycles, nothing feeding the fibroids will cause them to shrink. It's the goal. It's usually what happens. So it had shrunk. Both of them had shrunk. But like I said, not enough to go back and get it. But I was going to continue with the shots. So I had got the shot in like April, I believe. Or maybe March or April or something. May, it was a Mother's Day. I had got a call. Well, my job had us to do, we had mandatory physicals. So I had to go and do that, blood work, everything. So my hemoglobin was low. So they was like, okay, well, come back in like 2 days, do it again. Hemoglobin was still low. So they called me on Mother's Day. That Sunday, I got a call from the from the emergency doctor on call. He said, you have to go to the ER. You got to go get a blood transfusion because your hemoglobin is really low. You got less than half amount of the blood in your system that you need to fully function. They was like, you haven't been lightheaded, you haven't been out of breath or anything. And I was like, you know, I had been like, I noticed when I had walked to the car from my job, from coming from lunch, just walking from the car to the door, like I never had that kind of moment. But I had that during the week. But I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe it was a side effect from the shot that I had got, right? So I blew it off. But no, it was because I didn't hardly have any blood in my system. Like I had, my hemoglobin was like a 6. And it's supposed to be, they say like a 12, 13. So I'm like, what? I gotta go get a blood transfusion? But that went back to what I said to myself when I said, how in the world could you bleed this much and still be living? Yes. So it's so interesting how one thing affects everything. You know, you wouldn't think that your reproductive organs and the things going on in that area would have such a huge effect on everything. You know, so, you know, in my mind that, yeah, you lose the blood, but your system like regenerates and replenishes it. Well, not as fast as it should, you know. So I go in on Mother's Day. They gave me like maybe they gave me 1 or 2 bags or something. So of course, you know, that's the whole, I'm like, man, I don't want to get no bag of blood, or, you know. So I'm just like, really like, just like, God, I'm gonna trust you, you know. This is what I have to do, you know. It's of no fault of my own that this is my situation. So I just got to do the best I can, you know, do what they suggest and what makes sense to me. So I went and did that, and that was that. So after that, you know, ever since then, my hemoglobin been good. Cycles have been few and far between. It probably is time for me now to go and check on them and see where they at size wise. But the thing about, like I said, the Uterine depot, it sent you into menopause. So, you know, I was experiencing like the hot sweats. Now I do recall hearing my mom and them talk about, you know, the hot sweats and stuff, but I didn't get like her time, like cause they say you go into menopause around the same time that your mom went into it. So I don't recall how old she was when that was happening, but I recall her and my auntie with like the hot flashes and stuff like that. So I'm like, wow, this is what they were saying. This is what they were talking about, you know. Um, but after it wore off, it took a long time for that shot to wear off. And then after it wore off, it was, you know, I did have another cycle. And I was thinking that, okay, well, I'll go back and, you know, re-get the shot. But then I didn't have cycle after that. So it's like they very few and far between. So if they ain't bothering me, I'm not going to bother them. But I just wanted to share that because I don't know how many women may be experiencing symptoms from fibroids. But listen, that stuff is a life changer. And if it's any men listening to this, like, listen, she ain't lying. You know, she ain't just telling you she on her cycle for a month or two and she lying. She ain't lying unless she's just a liar. You know, that does happen. It's due to fibroids. It's due to things going on in our reproductive systems. And, you know, some of y'all men may be married to women who are experiencing this. And, you know, she may be too embarrassed to explain it to you, or she may not know. She may not have a good doctor. You know, bear with her. Because, listen, if you was bleeding and all kind of stuff coming out you, baby, for days, months, y'all won't be able to handle that. You know, a lot of times y'all guys don't know what we have to experience, what we go through, you know. And that's why it bothers me so much when you hear these guys like just downing women and downing black women, because y'all don't have a clue what we go through and how, you know, just regular, ordinary life happens to us and what we have to endure. You know, y'all don't have to sleep in during the diapers just because your cycle on and y'all don't want to mess up the bed. Whether somebody else in it or whether they not. Nobody wants to wake up and have a messy bed. Nobody want to have to go to the bathroom, you know, multiple times checking, is anything, you know, are you spot anything that came through. Y'all guys don't have a clue what we go through sometimes. And then you drag us like we're garbage, like we're nothing. Got a nerve to say we low value. Do you know how much we have to endure on this earth and still love on y'all and still be there for y'all and still raise y'all kids, help y'all raise y'all kids, still have to be submissive, still, you know? So it's such an insult to hear men just, you know, really drag a woman in their way and not knowing, you know, all the things that she has to go through within her body. And as she changes and as she, you know, she gets older, the different things that's going to be happening to her body. Because, you know, a lot of us, you know, like I said, I remember my mama having hot flashes, but she ain't tell me nothing about, okay, well, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. No, you're going to have all kind of changes that you're experiencing. That little juice pot that it's slippery when wet and it's just pouring, the juices is flowing. Baby, listen, that changes. Yeah, that changes. Enjoy it. Enjoy it while you have your youth and because it's a good possibility that will slack up. And of course, it's always gonna be somebody that's, oh, mine ain't never changed. Girl, please, probably if you think you got something that's so wet and juicy, he probably don't. You just think it is. Listen, your body changes it has to. That's life. It changes. These are things that's gonna come, you know. And I just wish that, you know, somebody would have told me more details. But I guess everybody is going through it and experiencing it for themselves the first time. So maybe they don't always think to, hey, let me tell my little niece, or hey, let me tell my daughter this, because they trying to figure it out as they go through it themselves. You know, so I always, in making this podcast, I wanted to be the voice of, for a younger generation, so that they can say, hey, this lady said this and that was going to happen. You know, maybe my mama didn't tell me. Maybe me and my best friends never talk about it. Maybe this, maybe that. And a lot of times, best friends can't talk about it because a lot of times it's like you be in competition with each other. If this best friend say, girl, you know, my juice box used to be real slippery, the other friend gonna say, girl, mine still is. Girl, you know you been dried up. But you just gonna say that just to counteract what she's saying. You can't say, you know what, I done noticed a little change too. We the same age, eat the same stuff, coming up around the same situation. Y'all, chances are you very similar. Like, if she ain't there, she's going to be getting there. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times you can't even go to your friends because they don't keep it quite 100 because they low key in competition. So it's like you need somebody that don't have a dog in the fight and could just say, hey, this is happening. This is happening to us, and we don't talk about it enough. Because if we did talk about it enough, we would know what to do soon as we start seeing these things happening. And that's why I say, listen, let me tell you something. Y'all have to stop telling these young girls that, oh, you got your whole life to have kids, and you don't know what they got. You don't know if they gonna develop a fibroid in their middle 20s, and so, you know, you don't know what they have. Don't stop them from doing nothing that the Lord blessed them with. Let them go on and do their thing, right? Because you don't know when or what's going to happen in their body that can hinder them from doing anything later in life, whether it's getting married or whether, you know, or having kids. Like, we have to get out of that. Oh, you could wait till you finish college and da-da-da. Okay, well, a lot of girls that done finished college ain't had no kids and can't have none. Multiple reasons why. And everybody gonna say, I ain't want none. Why? Because we don't like to really tell the fact that we was trying to get pregnant and we couldn't. Because why? Because it's a stigma on you when you can't. And we don't like to deal with that. And we don't like, and also stop asking them why they ain't had no kids. You know that girl got a boyfriend or a living boyfriend or whatever. And when y'all gonna have some, well, they probably been trying. Unless you got some information for her on what doctor she could go to or what she need to do, since she ain't got pregnant in a certain time, stop asking her them dumb questions. It just don't make no sense. You know something is going on. Common sense don't tell y'all that. So if you know that that's something she wants, put a bug in her ear and say, hey, go see these people right here. This doctor, this doctor's office, these are some, you know, they'll help you. They can help you. If they can't do it, then hey, you know. So yeah, it's just a lot of, you know, stigmas that come with that whenever you haven't got pregnant. And a lot of women, a lot of black women, they hold like they're ashamed of it or something. So listen, I ain't ashamed, and you don't have to be either. I don't care what the situation is. You don't have to be ashamed because listen, everything ain't for everybody. If life happened in a way, certain things happen in your body, and God said, hey, this is not going to be for you, that's just not going to be for you. That's just not going to be for you. You accept that, and you accept the life that is for you. That's what you're going to do. You accept the life that is for you, and you make the best with the life that's for you. Right? But you don't have to feel ashamed. Hey, it didn't happen. It didn't happen for you. Life happened. Other things started going on in your body. You couldn't control that. Right? And that's another thing y'all have to do is when y'all having abortions, y'all young, think about that. I ain't gonna say make sure that's really what you want to do, because in that moment, that is what you want to do in that moment when you're doing that. But if you could stop and think long term, if I do this, would I still do it if I know I never have kids later on in life, even when I get married? Would you still do that? You know, and it's hard to think in terms like that, but those are the kind of things that play on your mind whenever life has happened. Because I've thought about that. Okay, well, if you knew that later on you weren't going to get, would you have done that? And the reality is that given the same situation and circumstances, yeah, I probably would have did the same thing based on how I felt at that time. I didn't want to be a mom, right? I wanted to go to college. I wanted to go do all the things that I did end up doing. You know, I never thought that I would want to have kids and stuff later. Like, I knew that that's what you do. You go to college, you have kids, you get married. I know that's what you do. Eventually, I probably would have done that. But was that like first and foremost on my list? No. So by the time you get ready to do that, and now you have some complications, or it's not happening as fast as you would like it to, and then you like, okay, well, what's going on? You know, so then of course you get in your feelings. Of course you're gonna feel some way about that, especially when you know it's a man that you wanted y'all, and you wanted the family union, and you wanted, and it didn't happen. Yes, you're gonna feel some way about that. You're gonna go through some things about that, but nothing that God can't take you through. He took me through it. I made it out just fine. He'll do the same thing for you. Tap in with him, get your relationship together, because this life will throw you some things. You hear me? This life will throw you some things that you were ill-equipped for. Nobody prepared you. Nobody told you. You didn't have anybody to look at and say, well, this, well, that, you know, like, oh, okay, I'm just like her, you know, like, no, like, yeah, I do have an auntie who she doesn't have any children, but she wanted to have kids, you know, and she was pregnant before, and, you know, what her situation was, but she ended up never being able to, you know, actually hold the baby, to carry it long term, you know, I don't know, but in my mind, it was different, because that's really what she really, really wanted. That, you know, she loved kids, you know, and that's really, you know, I was never that person that just loved kids, had to have them. You know, once I thought, okay, I done met the man I'm finna marry, yeah, of course I wanted, you know, the whole thing. But when it wasn't happening like that, you know, it just didn't go like that, you know. And even he used to be like, man, why you didn't get pregnant? Like, it just didn't happen. You know, I don't have no answers for that. Because in his mind, that would have solidified us. But no, God had other plans for everybody involved. So that's that. You have to be able to accept the things that life brings your way, even when it wasn't a part of what you wanted, what you thought, what your hope or your dream was. You have to, life will throw some things your way that you're going to have to, baby, you're going to have to take that licking and keep on ticking. But yeah, so if you're having some, you know, abnormal bleeding, abnormal cycles, pay attention to all of that. Now, that's the one thing I wish I would have paid more attention to it soon as it started, and not just letting stuff like go and slide and not having answers and not worrying about getting answers until I really wanted answers. You know, you got to be more, you got to want to know more. You got to be more diligent. You got to, you know, chase it a little more when your body is not operating. And then I felt like I stayed with the wrong doctor for way too long out of comfort. Now I bet we go real wrong with that. The best thing I could have ever done was leave the doctor that I was with and found the new doctor that I found. Now, had I found him years ago, it would have been better for me. You know, I think, all things considered. But I was sticking with this old doctor. He wasn't running no kind of good tests. No, he just was old school and just only wanted to do old school things. When I got with this doctor, the first thing he did was ran panels telling me, you know, if, you know, like how my eggs functioning, am I close to being menopause, you know, all these numbers and stuff that my blood was telling him, you know. And I'm like, man, why this other OBGYN, why he ain't never did this? Why he never ran these type of tests to tell me where I'm at in the big scheme of things? You know? So I learned so much. And then, like I say, once you know, then it eases your mind and gives you a peace when it comes to the things that are not happening. You know, my doctor explained to me, like, you know, you have eggs in your ovaries. Okay, but if they're older eggs and they're not that strong or functioning, okay, so then if that older egg does meet with a sperm, that egg may not even be no good. They could be linking up, but it's not strong enough to embed anywhere. And then even if it gets strong enough to embed somewhere, because you have complications with where it can embed at. So it was like, you got a lot of things that may not be, things got to really, really line up perfectly. That's why it's really a true miracle when people, can conceive, because you don't really you take that for granted until you really see the people who have problems conceiving. And you're like, wow, it all seems so simple. But no, ain't nothing simple about it. God's hand really, really has to be in that, So, yeah, that is that. And like I say, men, have a little more grace with us women, because we go through some things. And some of y'all, like I say, y'all be acting like y'all hate black women. But listen, man, what's better? What's better than women? What's better than a good, solid, strong, loving, kind woman? What's better than her?